Chapter 3, Part 4. So now we're going to move on to pigments. Now remember that pigments are used for painting and for a lot of other things like ceramic surfaces and um, chalk pastels, different things like that. Even crayons use the same pigments, okay? So right here we're looking at some natural pigments, some things from the earth, and they also might be vegetable, such as cornmeal here, which is probably this one here. And then yellow ochre, now that is a mineral. Gypsum is also another sort of mineral compound. Ochre, sand, charcoal. Now remember, charcoal comes from our fire. Sorry, that's the cornmeal over here. Beg your pardon. And then pollen over here. So there's different things in our world, natural elements, thousands of years they've been around, that make up colorants. All right. Bright, vivid colors that we see today, a lot of that stuff didn't occur until the late 19th century, meaning around 1870, 1880. But this color palette that you're looking at here, this has been around for millennia. This has been around for a long, long time. So the pigments are just the dry color. They're what make the color in the paint. When you paint onto a support, now this is confusing. Some of these things are described in a very different kind of way that maybe you're used to. Support would be, in this case, clay, what we're looking at. A ceramic pot, that's what that means. The support is what the paint is applied to. And this is confusing because you don't paint ceramics, you glaze ceramics. So it's a little different. In this case, in the ancient days, working 490 BC, this is slip-on clay. So slip is not a glaze or a paint. It is a ceramic material. It is the pigment that you saw mixed with some clay and water, and then it's painted on, and then it's fired. So don't get confused. You don't fire paint, and you don't paint on ceramic, but that's one of the ways that she's trying to describe how these pigments work, okay? So the first one we're looking at is ceramic, so we have clay here, but we also use stone. We do paint stone. We paint on plaster. We paint on wood panel, paper, fabric, and so on. An ancient support, if you want to call it that, the figure, and if you ever watch like Skin Wars on Netflix or that kind of thing, body painting is something that's been around for a long time. Masquerades, performances, theater, that kind of stuff. Now, this would be very carefully mixed so it's non-toxic. So there are certain things you don't want on your skin. And this might be mixed with sort of like a olive oil or something that it does well with the skin. Different kinds of makeup are mixed differently. You know, we don't exactly know what those ingredients are because they want to spend, you know, they want us to pay money for it. But at any rate, the pigments are often similar, but you want to stick to the non-toxic ones. Okay, so encaustic is one of the most ancient forms of painting. This goes back to biblical times where encaustic was used. Now, this is from the 1950s. Jasper Johns is using encaustic again. Hadn't been used for hundreds of years, thousands of years, really. But he decided he was excited about it. Now, I will tell you, encaustic is so popular today. I see it every time I go to a gallery. Encaustic is wax. So you're mixing pigment with wax. Now, it's not just wax. It's got a resin in there, too. But basically, you want to think about it as beeswax pigment. You heat it up, and you move it around, and then it's stuck there, okay? Not the ultimate way to paint if you're trying to change things, but if you know what you want and where you want the color, and you're also open to some chance where it sort of bleeds or blends or is uneven, see how it's kind of uneven in there, which Jasper Johns likes, then you're going to be happy with encaustic. Okay, fresco was our next one that we used for thousands of years. Now, this is 1st century in Vesuvius, where there was a big volcano, and the volcano covered a lot of places, Naples, what I'm trying to think of, a couple different areas where it preserved a lot of these paintings on a wall. The good thing about fresco is that it will last a long time. The bad thing about fresco is you can't move this painting. It's soaked into the wall. So what you would do is you would work with plaster on top of, whatever your wall is made out of, stone or wood or whatever it is. Generally speaking, these are stone or drywall type walls, or brick and then plaster put on top of brick or whatever. And then you put the plaster on, and then while the plaster is wet, this is bond fresco or true fresco, and you go wet, and then you go wet on wet. You take the wet paint with this pigment in water. There's nothing else. It's just the plaster. The lime in the plaster is the binder. Okay, so you're taking water and pigment and you're painting onto wet plaster. Fresco secco is, secco means dry, um, is painted on a dry plaster wall. A little bit easier, not as rich of color. I don't know in terms of which lasts longer, but bond fresco is the way that it's. I would say it says it's more durable, so I'm gonna go with that. But you're gonna paint on pigments, wet pigment and water, onto dry plaster. Okay. When it's wet, you only have a limited time before that's going to dry, especially in a desert climate like we have. You're going to have to paint really quickly. Okay, tempera, which is more familiar to us, um, which we're thinking of third grade, use tempera kindergarten. Not the same thing. Similar mixture, but tempera is mixed with egg yolk, which is really sticky. If you've ever had something like a house or a car egg, that stickiness, that's an early paint binder. Or it can be milk. It's kind of different things that are going to dry kind of over time, kind of quickly-ish. You don't have a ton of time to work. So the background of this might have been done first, and then it layered up. It has a flatness to it. Now this has a lot of depth for these particular pieces. Tempera is usually done on wood. You don't usually do tempera on canvas. It tends to crack. But that's tempera on wood. That's what we're looking at here. And you have to work with it kind of quickly. Pigment mixed with egg yolk. That's